Okay. Well, what we can do is usually when I start a webinar, if it's just me and you and a couple other folks, we can keep it more conversational. So that way, if you have questions along the way, you can stop me. We can address them and talk about anything you need to at that period of time. So
Yep.
what I usually like to do is kind of talk from the instructor and student perspective, so you can get a gauge of how it works on both ends. And if you want to kind of talk a little bit through the technical piece, we can do that too. It's a really easy plug-in that your Canvas rep would do on your behalf. And then there's an LTI app that you would enable as an admin in Canvas. And that will basically open up a LockDown browser dashboard, which will show up in the menu bar to the instructor. So that's pretty much how that gets set up. There's a browser install that would go on the student machine. The browser itself is a web link URL download, and it could either be downloaded by the student themselves to their own machine, or if you're using it more in a lab setting, we have a lab edition that you can push out to multiple machines at once. So a couple different versions, but deployment is just slightly different.
Okay.
All right, so why don't I log in as an instructor in Canvas? And what I'll do is I'll turn on the LockDown browser and monitor requirement on a particular quiz. So once the LTI is in place, and no matter what course the instructor goes into, over in their menu bar over on the left, they'll see a LockDown browser dashboard. So really the goal here is to make sure that the instructor creates the assessment the way that they want, and then as a very last step, we will apply the security to that particular exam. Look.
Yep, sorry about that. Yep, that's fine. Sorry.
Still you? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I see it twice. I wasn't sure if you doubled yourself.
Yep.
Did you hear the dashboard piece as the last step? Just want to make sure I covered that.
No, could you go back a step? I just quickly kind of clicked on something and it went a back browser or a button and it went back to a page that I was on before. So.
Yeah, no problem. So where I was basically log into Canvas as an instructor.
Yeah.
And then kind of talked about how the LTI app, what it will do is create this dashboard in the menu bar over in the left-hand margin of the screen.
Yeah.
Typically it resides in the bottom.
Yeah.
So what instructors would do is, create the assessment the way that they want, get ready to deliver it, and then as a last step, turn on the requirement from this dashboard.
Okay.
So what the browser does is it basically will display any quiz that shows up in a particular course. So all the assessments show up on the left, and then you have a couple different columns where you can either turn on LockDown browser as a standalone, so it still can be used as a standalone application. And then if you wanted to require the monitor webcam piece, you can also enable that from the same area.
Yeah.
So it's as easy as basically, clicking from the drop-down menu, modify settings, require the browser for the exam. There's a password setting that's optional. Basically, if you entered a password here, what it would do is it would force the student to type in a password before they can get to the quiz. So it's really just one more layer of security.
Yeah.
Under advanced settings, there's some optional settings that you can use. Each one of these has an explain link to give you further details if necessary.
Yeah.
There's an iPad solution. All you need to do is check a box. LockDown browser is accessible. So for students that require, accessibility software such as screen readers, they can use these tools in conjunction with that. And then calculators, obviously, a couple different options that you can select.
How do I'm guessing if you allow specific students to access that, it then provides an extra box where you choose which students.
Exactly right. So when you open this up further, you just basically type in that student's Canvas username. And what the browser will not do is basically block those applications from running in the background. So it really just frees them up for those particular students.
And is there a definitive list, or is it a predefined list, or can we add to that list of software that is allowed for accessibility?
Yeah, basically what it's doing is it's not shutting down the programs, and it's opening up the Alt-Tab function. And there's another couple functions that the student would need to use in order to kind of toggle back and forth between the two. We've kind of whitelisted a bunch of applications. If there's something that's not whitelisted, we can add it. So that way, if it's something that you use that's not already on the list, then we can just add it on your behalf. That's very simple to do.
Okay.
But I think we've covered pretty much the most popular, JAWS, Window Eyes.
Yeah.
I believe there's a new one that's out there that we find that's pretty common. Just can't think of the name. It's escaping me.
I mean, JAWS is the most common one, and also sometimes Dragon text-to-speak, because sometimes a student will need to dictate to the exam because they can't type.
Yep, that's another common one that we see as well. You're right.
Yeah.
So as a standalone, if you just want to use LockDown Browser, you see at the bottom that the monitor default is set to not require it. So basically, it's just a save and close. The browser is required. If you want it to require monitor, well, there's a couple options. You could either enable it for everyone, which is pretty much going to be if it's a fully online course. That would be the option you would do. Some instructors like to offer a choice. You know, if students are resistant to using a webcam, or if they don't have a webcam, or if they prefer to come on campus and do proctor testing, this would allow them to either use monitor or they can use LockDown Browser somewhere on campus as proctored. So that's the setting there. That could be optional for a student.
Yeah.
And the only difference really between LockDown Browser and monitor is that with LockDown Browser, it allows the student to go right into the quiz and locks them in. With monitor, it's just these additional steps that they have to follow. So we force them to do a webcam check. You still there, Joel?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I saw one of you go offline. We force them to do a webcam check just to make sure they have a working webcam, and it does a video audio check to confirm it. A couple of steps to verify student identity. You know, they can use their webcam to take a photo and then show some form of identification that has a photo attached to their name. So it could be anything. Pretty much where you see edit text, you can be very specific with what you want. Environment check is just proving to the instructor that their testing area is free and devoid of any external resources that they might try to use to try to bypass the browser on the machine. Notes, textbooks, etc., that type of thing.
I just shared my webcam so you know I'm still alive.
Okay. And then additional instructions, just anything extra you want to tell your students. Sometimes it's a reinforcement of the obvious, don't get up and move around, stay in your seat. Remember you signed the honor code, the following resources aren't, allowed, et cetera, et cetera. And then at that point, it's just another save and close. So pretty much what the instructor will see now is that the requirement has the names of the products at the end of the title, and then both columns are required in green.
Yeah, so each of those are separate quizzes, and then the requirement is in there. And you can edit those before, up until the point at which they go live, I presume.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And they can be turned off if you say, okay, well, I could turn it off. Maybe we're going to do an in-class review of that assessment. We don't need it on anymore because it's in the grade book. Just toggle it off. Now what the student will do is simply use the browser, which is located on the computer. Typically, if it's a PC, you'll see it right on the desktop. If it's a Mac, then it will show up in the application folder. So pretty easy to find. And then this will be the browser that you use to get to that assessment. And what it does is it acts as a portal to your Canvas site. So the nice thing is the student doesn't need to memorize your Canvas URL login page. It just automatically takes them there.
Now, that's interesting because we use single sign-on. So when they go to canvas.hull.ac.uk, I presume we configure where Respondus would go to.
Precisely, yep.
And then they would have to authenticate in via, well, they wouldn't have to authenticate because the single sign-on, they're automatically signed into the PC, which is on university, so it should know who they are, just take them straight in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A lot of my schools use single sign-on, so pretty much there's an admin area where you would set up a profile that points the browser to your instance of Canvas or your single sign-on. So that's how it knows where to go. And then students pretty much just go through the motions as if this was a standard browser. They go into their course, they'll go to their quizzes link, which is obviously here. identify the quiz that they need to take, and we clearly state, that the browser is required, so they know. And then before they take the quiz, we kind of built in this best practices model that will help the student ahead of time know if their computer is supported and ready to take the exam. So up in the little menu bar up here, there's a Help Center button.
Yeah.
What this will allow the student to do is a couple things. The most important piece, in my opinion, is the system check. What it will do is basically to check the student's computer to make sure it has everything that's needed in order to take the assessment successfully. I would say the thing that I'm the most concerned about is the bandwidth test. Obviously, when students are off campus, they're at the mercy of whatever internet connection that they have available to them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if it's poor, they're going to have a bad test result, even if it's a normal browser. What we're basically giving them is, hey, your bandwidth is good. Feel free to move forward to go in. If it's poor, you might need to find a stable connection somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they have a problem, they can report it either directly to you or directly to our support team. And what this will do is send us the information regarding their device, their institution, and whatever .exe files may be running that could be conflicting with the browser itself.
Where would they report that? Oh, report an issue to Respondus.
Yes.
Okay.
And this gives us pretty much everything that we would need from the student without having to ask them, which a lot of this could be very confusing to the student. They might not even know what type of webcam they're using or so on and so forth. So this is very valuable to us.
Yeah.
And then typically, if you get all green marks, then you just go in to take the quiz and then go through that startup sequence that I showed you in the dashboard. So the first part is the webcam check. So right then. What the student will do is just simply record a 5-second video. And what it does is a quick video audio check, and then it plays the video back to the student just as a confirmation that everything's working properly. When it confirms it, it discards it and allows them to move forward. So hopefully you can hear that okay. I have it turned up.
Yeah, I got that.
Next piece is the student photo, where they just simply, smile for their webcam, take a quick photo. I have a student ID card, which I find is probably the most useful because it has the name of the institution, their face, and their name, which is pretty much all we're looking for is to compare the two side by side. And then the environment check is subjective. Every instructor might have a different philosophy or way of doing this, but basically what the student can do is use their webcam and just kind of show you their testing area. So you can see, I live in upstate New York in a fairly rural area. So all the leaves are off the trees, getting ready for the end of fall. And the goal here is just to prove that there's nothing within arm's reach. I don't have anything set up in my room to really, try to beat the browser, try to look up information. This gets played back to the student, again, like the webcam check did. And then allows them to continue forward to the additional instructions. And this is just what else you want to tell them. And then once they hit continue, they can now begin the exam. So now they will be in a Canvas exam. If there's a time limit, the timer would start now. What the browser is now doing is, shutting down any type of instant messaging, screen capturing, screen sharing application, locking right-click menu, function print screen, alt-tabbing, tool monitors, VMware, you name it. Pretty much whatever you try to do, you are pretty much locked in.
Yeah.
It does give you some flexibility in terms of using advanced formatting. Some departments might want students to be able to do other things, whether it's manipulate an Excel spreadsheet file, whether it's viewing images, linking out to areas on the web. We still give you that flexibility if that's what the instructor wants to allow the student to do.
Yeah.
And there's that calculator up here too. Basically, it opens up another tab, work out your equation, come back. So pretty much it's a standard browser. We just kind of stripped away key elements that you can use to look up information. The file edit menu bar is removed, the ability to navigate, URL address field is removed, minimize, maximize. I can't close out of the browser. So
Yeah.
Keeping them in here is the important piece.
Yeah.
And then once they submit it,
Control-Alt-Delete.
Control-Alt-Delete, what it will basically do is pull up the task manager, but those buttons that would be there are blocked. So there's not a way to switch user or toggle back and forth. The shutdown button will work. So we don't want them to be completely locked in where, you know, if they have an internet outage, they can't shut down their computer.
Yeah.
But if they do, the browser will acknowledge that that had happened and timestamp it and inform the instructor that the student had shut down the computer. So that way they know what had happened.
Makes sense.
And then we submit. We allow students to give us feedback if they so choose. Pretty much 99% of the time that they don't, or if they do, they complain. And then everything's back to normal. Now what the instructor sees after the fact, once that assessment has been submitted, when they come back to the dashboard, there will now be a video review option available to them. And what this will do is display a dashboard of their class. Students' first and last name, date and time the assessment was completed, how long it took them, and then we've built in this piece called video, automated video analysis. So the goal here is to detect if any type of suspicious or problematic behavior had occurred during that exam session.
Yeah.
So we have a facial detection percentage column. Flagging indicates the number of flags that we deemed could be suspicious. And then total flag time is how long the behavior had occurred. So all these columns could be sorted. Basically, it could be sorted by flags. It could be sorted by grade, you know, so on and so forth. And if you suspect something for, you know, particular flag, 5 flags versus none, click on the student's name. And what we do is we show the entire testing session for that exam. We've just basically broken out into these rough 1-minute time increments. So you can either do a quick sweep and notice behavior for 16 mark, 624, 728, 520, or we've also timestamped that type of behavior underneath this big video player. So you can see the 425 mark for 29 seconds. The student was missing for that period of time. Where'd they go? I don't know. But I told them to stay seated, not okay. It detects multiple people showing up in the framework of the webcam. This is obviously probably not a cheater. This is our marketing director and her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then it detects if somebody different is now taking the assessment and the original person is now out of the frame of the webcam. So this type of behavior is within the scope of the webcam that we're picking up. You can hear audio if you play the video, that type of deal. This obviously would be considered a false positive if this was a real situation where it was a parent and a child. So we know sometimes life gets in the way, probably not cheating, but if, again, this was another student, we would know that this was not okay. Typically what you want to see is when you click on a student's name is this type of behavior. Not a lot of movement. The student's in the frame of the webcam. Their face is detected the entire time. They're facing the webcam the entire time. So really, when you see 0, 0, it's not really necessary to go in. You know, honestly, I think it's just you can skip those students. Your students aren't aware if this type of behavior is occurring at all. So, or they don't know that you can see thumbnails. They don't know what gets flagged and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So we talk about it as a deterrent to cheating. You know, we're trying to prevent students from even considering it in the first place with their webcam staring at them the entire time. Videos are stored on our Amazon cloud for up to 5 years at no additional charge. And the videos can be pulled back after a year if you need them for whatever purpose later on down the road.
Where is it possible to get them stored on European Amazon servers?
I believe we have a server over in the UK. I will double check, but we had a customer that had extremely high usage. So we had to maintain a server over in Europe just because they wanted the video stored, you know.
Yeah, I mean, whilst we're still in Europe, and that's one of our things that we're worrying about these days. But whilst we're still in Europe, we're bound by European data safe harbor agreements, which means our student data, image recognition, anything like that that's to do with students has to live in European orders.
Sure.
So
Sure.
there are little bits of data that can go out, but we always ask it of all our vendors, can we make sure we have the data being captured and stored in the UK? Well, in Europe, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll double check exactly where it's located, just for peace of mind, to say, okay, we have it here, so it should cover that.
Okay. Sorry, if it's Amazon Web Services, it's normally Ireland or Holland.
Yeah.
So if it's just European Amazon Web Services, it's fine.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on the dashboard at all?
No, I'm good with that.
Well, I could talk pricing, just so you're aware of what our pricing model looks like.
Yeah.
So when you go to our website, the nice thing is we're very transparent with what our price looks like. When you come over to the menu bar on the left, we do have some training videos for instructors, based on the LMS that they use. Quick overview how to prepare an exam. We have a tremendous amount of resources, tips on how to use the browser, sample course syllabus, overview for students, pretty much anything that they would need. Pricing for LockDown Browser is based on your institution's full-time student equivalency. So based on the ranges that you might fall into over here on the left would dictate what the price would be over on the right.
Yeah.
For Monitor, we have the same type of resources, videos, that type of thing. For Monitor, we have two licensing models. The first model is an annual tiered model. What we do is any instructors that want to purchase the license as a university, it would be $3,950 for unlimited use, which includes all that video storage, includes unlimited support, for only $39.50. So really what the goal is, we're trying to figure out which departments on your campus might want to utilize this type of technology versus which ones may not. You might have some courses or departments that do project-based testing where this might not be applicable, or you might have other departments that do your traditional multiple choice, true false, that type of deal.
Yeah.
After first year, if you're below 1,200 seats, then your price will stay the same. So we're not trying to charge you a lot of money for very low usage. But if your usage grows and you're over 1,200 seats, then to add an additional bundle of 1,000 is only $19.50. So it's a very small amount to include another extra large number of seats. And I opened up how a seat is defined because it's probably the #1 question that we get. There's also a student purchase model. So this would basically, you'd have to pay for a LockDown browser license, but you could pass on the Monitor cost to a student, which would only be a $10 course fee. So that way a student, if they wanted to use the Monitor tool, maybe in 1 or 2 courses, it'd be $10. If it was 2 courses, obviously it'd be $20. But unlimited use of Monitor within as many assessments in that course as they need to take. So there's really no cap on how many quizzes they can use.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do offer free trials for both of these. So you can either trial LockDown Browser free for 2 months on its own, or you can trial it in conjunction with Respondus Monitor. So it's a no obligation trial. It's just really, you want to see how it works, evaluate it in your own situation, and then you can decide, where to go from there.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I don't think so at this stage. I kind of know a bit